time that you heard those chords and that run, you knew immediately that shit was about to go down. Now, I'm not here to really explore the ins and outs and the whys and hows of the song, or the composition rather. What I am here to do is to try to beat this composition that we know as the Approaching Cynthia theme. Before I start, I must emphasize that music is mostly subjective, meaning that whether I'm going to be doing something better or not is entirely up to your discretion and honestly my own and anybody else's that is going to be listening to this afterwards, right? So with that in mind, what I thought about was, well, let's bring some objectivity into subjectivity. How are we going to do that? First, we're going to set a couple rules for this challenge. First rule, I cannot change the instrumentation drastically. What that means is that I cannot change the fundamental instrument of the song. Since this is a piano-centered composition, I cannot make it into a violin-centered composition or anything else. However, I can add more instruments depending on what I want, but I still cannot make it extremely different. So I cannot turn it into an orchestral song, for example. Second rule, the song has to be in the same style. This is a piano classical style song, meaning that I cannot change that into a rock song. Otherwise, we're comparing apples to oranges, even more than we technically would already be, right? And finally, the third rule, which is that I will have to use parts of the harmonic palette of the original composition in my own. What that means is that for certain elements of the harmony that were present in the original composition, I will have to incorporate into my own composition. Of course, I can deviate from that, but I still have to have parts of the original song in my own. Not exactly the same thing, but parts that sound like the original song. And here are 5 metrics that I'm going to be using to judge these songs to compare them, so that we can have a more apples to apples comparison. So first, the ethos of the song, right? So the character of the song. So how well does the song perform in the context that it is being placed at? So how well does it fit the context that we're placing the song, which is Approaching Cynthia, right? Second metric, the melody. How interesting the melody is, really. And that is honestly the most objective out of all of these. The third, which is virtuosity. So how complex it is. The third metric is going to be virtuosity of the song. So which of these songs is more complex, virtuosic, and stuff like that. The fourth, in my opinion, the second most important, which is the emotional weight of the song. How emotionally charged is this song? Is it a powerful song? Just because the song is happy or sad or what have you, does not necessarily mean that it will have to be or not a powerfully charged song. Of course, part of this has to be in relation to the character of the song. If it's a song for a light moment, you also don't want to have it extremely emotionally charged because it's not going to make sense, right? And then the fifth and final metric is going to be the innovation. Did my composition innovate enough in regards to the original composition to where I could replace it? Because otherwise, if I just made something that is sure good, but it's similar enough to where they're interchangeable, then I didn't really beat it. I just made something that is equally as good. Now I'm going to be playing the original composition here in my DAW so we can have a basis of comparison. Okay, so how do I plan on building upon this composition? So first, at the introduction, instead of starting with an immediate bang and jumping right into action, I'm gonna make something that is a little bit more slow and has some more build up instead of just immediately having an impact. So something like a waltz. Okay, now that that is done and I'm satisfied with it, I'm gonna actually go ahead and make something that is more high octane and that has more high impact and actually pick up the pace of the song and make it be more evenly matched to the original composition. Okay, that sounded pretty nice to me. Now I'm gonna keep going with the same pace, but I'm gonna change the techniques a little bit so that instead of it being arpeggios in the left hand, I'm just gonna be playing octaves and chords that have that are more block chords, but have a more rhythmic characteristic to it, so that it's just more interesting and a variation of the same thing essentially. Okay, now we're almost at the end. So this next part, I'm going to be focusing on resetting the tempo and rhythm of the song and making a transition towards the final chorus of the song, or the main juice of the song, if you will. And now finally, the chorus of the song, the meat of the song, the juice of the song, right? So I'm gonna be actually playing the entirety of the composition now over the gameplay that we saw at the beginning of the video to see how it would actually look like if it were to be played while we were playing the game. So that was my take on the on this composition. So, say for a couple performance mistakes that I did when I was recording the song, I think it actually fit quite nicely. However, there was definitely a problem in terms of the length of the song, because the initial part with the waltz maybe should have been a little bit faster, because I had to slow down the part of the video before the battle started in order for the actual waltz to fit. Otherwise, it would not match up with the with what's happening on the screen. Alright, now to wrap it up, let's go and look back at our metrics that we had, or that I had proposed for this song, or for this challenge, which were the ethos, right? So the characterization of the song, how well it fit the context that we were trying to use the song for, the melody, so how interesting the melody was, the virtuosity, how complex it is it to play, how hard, the emotional weight of the song, so how emotionally charged the song was, and how much innovation did I actually have in comparison to the original composition, right? And so I'm gonna be judging this from 0 to 5. So we're starting with the ethos. I think for the ethos, I would give myself a 5 out of 5. I think I did pretty well, and I basically did the exact same thing that the original song did, which was give that sense of about to engage something that is overwhelming and that shit's about to go down. The melody, I would say that I would give myself a 3 out of 5 in comparison to the original song. The original song definitely had some much more interesting runs in between the main sections of the song, if you will. So the transition between parts with the runs was, in the original composition, were way more interesting than, or a bit more interesting than mine. Now for the virtuosity, I think I nailed that quite efficiently, or quite well. I'll give myself a 4 out of 5. Like I said, the runs on the original composition were harder than mine. But since I still followed the idea of double arpeggios in the left and right hand, and on the right hand having the chords being an arpeggio that has a melody imbued into it, I think I would give the virtuosity a 4 out of 5, like I said. So nothing too complicated to play, but also nothing that is extremely easy either. So it's in a good in-between. It's an etude for arpeggios after all. And in terms of the emotional weight of the song, I don't think I really expanded much on it. So I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5, because I didn't really change much. So I just kind of or out of any of these metrics, this is the one that I tied in the hardest, because it's the same thing. I didn't really expand much into it. So, and lastly, one of the most important aspects of our metrics that we were using, which is the innovation. How much did I innovate in comparison to the original composition? Now, I did change the initial part to have a waltz instead of just jumping right into action, which I think adds a certain level of build-up that is more incremental instead of just getting right into it, which I think is definitely more interesting. However, like we mentioned previously, the pacing of the song, because of that, made it so where the waltz made it so where the pace of the song kind of fell off at the beginning, because it didn't match the amount of time you had between the last member of the Elite Four up until Cynthia and her dialogue before the battle started. So it also wasn't really the most it worked conceptually, but in practice it kind of fell flat a little bit. But that's that. And as far as the other things, the rhythm that I changed in the middle and making the block chords to make it more interesting rhythm, that definitely was something that I innovated on the original song, but not that much. And then the last thing that I innovated was in the chorus, where I made, obviously the chorus was very similar in the first half, but then in the second half I kind of made it a little bit more hopeful and triumphant, but it's still not heavily deviating from the actual emotions and the core and harmonic palette that the chorus was originally using. So all in all, I would give myself a 3 out of 5. I think that I innovated in a lot of things, or in a couple things, but didn't really, couldn't really say that I made something that was entirely original and that transcended the original piece. Alright, so drum rolls please for the results. And the results were... I failed. So I think that for the most part, I actually ended up managing to make a side grade with a slight downgrade in comparison to the original composition, but I did not manage to evolve it in any way whatsoever other than the walls at the beginning. So I didn't really think that I transcended and evolved and built upon it. So I would say that this is a fail. Close call though, could have, with some more work, definitely could have gotten something that would be, it was definitely close though, so I would happily and gladly take another shot and have a rematch in the future, if that makes any sense. But yeah, that was it for me. It was the first time me doing this. I enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you guys have any recommendations of songs or compositions that you guys want me to do this type of stuff with, I would gladly take a shot at it. Would love to keep it at anime and game compositions, because I want to become an anime and game composer, so that would be the only two types of media that I would be more willing to do this for. And so yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your time and attention. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all those shenanigans, and see y'all next time. Peace.